Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we are going to be talking about a brand new original movie that has a massive budget. This movie is called Free Guy, starring Ryan Reynolds and Jodie Comer. And this is a movie that I was kind of skeptical over because the trailer seemed like it had potential, but it felt like a movie that has such a great concept that could be easily ruined in execution. And I'm sure you've heard that from 1,000 of spoiler-free reviews from, just a bunch of other YouTubers on this platform, and I will add on top of all of that. And although I didn't think this was a perfect movie, I think a lot of the humor, especially during the first act, did not work for me. I think at large, as the movie went on, the movie kept on winning me over time and time again until the ending of the film. And this is just a purely enjoyable, fun movie that video game lovers will absolutely love. So I'm here to talk about the spoilery aspects of this movie, about the plot, about the story, and about some of the jokes that really worked for me. So if you guys have not seen Free Guy, make sure to skip this review and come back to it once you have seen the movie, because I am going to recommend it to those who like Ryan Reynolds' humor, because I think for one, if you're not a fan of his humor, you probably won't like this movie, because Ryan Reynolds essentially plays who Ryan Reynolds plays. And if you're not a big video game person, you don't get all the little inside jokes that this movie has, because it has plenty of those, then I'm not quite sure if you'll enjoy this movie. But I think it would be interesting to hear somebody's take on it who is not super big into video game movies, because I think the story in general is kind of universal. So let's just jump right into the spoilers of Free Guy. So let's just go act by act, because I do think that this movie severely improves once you get into the meat of the story. So it essentially starts off exactly how the trailer starts off, with Ryan Reynolds going about his daily loop of a life. He wakes up, he greets his goldfish, he has breakfast, he goes get some coffee, and he goes to his bank where he inevitably gets robbed time and time and time again. And then he basically does the whole thing over again the next day. And you get to see as he starts to see this other woman that's roaming around the streets, some woman that has the sunglasses. There are these characters that have sunglasses that he will see on the streets and be like, these people are like the heroes of the world, even though they're causing so much destruction in the world. They are seen as the heroes. And so he sees this woman and he wants to break free of this loop that he is stuck in. So that's exactly what he does. He fights off this one bank robber, shoots him dead essentially, and he freaks out. He has the sunglasses, he puts them on, and he sees the world around him. But that's not quite when he realizes that he's in a video game. He realizes that there's a game in this world, and he starts playing that game, and he gets really, really good at it. And that's something that I wasn't expecting from this movie. I wasn't expecting his character. I was expecting him to be more of a fish out of water throughout the entire movie. But no, there's an entire montage sequence where Jodie Comer's character says, if you can get to level 100, then I can talk to you. And that's exactly what he does. He goes through this game, he starts rising through the ranks, up through the levels of this video game, and just unknowingly becomes incredible at this game because he is a part of this world and he can constantly be inside of it. And he starts to gain a following from the people outside in the real world looking into the game, all the people who watch and play this video game on Twitch streams and all these things. And you get so many cameos from YouTubers like Jacksepticeye and Pokemon and Ninja and Dan, the Diamond Minecart, or whatever his name is. There's so many people in this movie that I recognized from YouTube, which is really cool to see all those people. And the fact that this movie doesn't shy away from the gaming world, like, it's not just a world of a video game. Gaming is a lot bigger than that. There's a whole sphere around it. There's a whole aspect of streaming it and all these different things and all these different aspects of gaming that this movie takes point of, and the behind the scenes of the villain of this movie being the game developer, and all these different things that this movie takes in consideration when it's making a video game movie without being a video game adaptation, which I think it did a very good job at that. And I will say this first 30 minutes has some really fun jokes. It has some things that I can feel like a lot of people will laugh when you're in a big audience for it, but I'll be honest, most of the jokes in this first act just did not land for me. One, partly because I did see a lot of these jokes in, say, the trailer. I think the trailer has a lot of the jokes from the first act of this movie, and so I was kind of going through this like, okay, this is exactly what I expected from this movie. But as soon as Jodie Comer's character and Guy start to have this weird little relationship between each other, and they start to realize that they have so many things in common with like this bubblegum ice cream, they drink the same type of coffee, all these different weird coincidences, which are not coincidences at all, you find out later in the movie, which I did predict at this point. I was like, his character and his things that he's based off of is based off of her in some way or another, which that is going to come into play later on in the movie. But once this relationship starts forming, and once they're realizing that he is actually just an NPC in this world and he's not a playable character, because everybody thinks that he's some like hacker who broke into the game and is playing as an NPC with this different skin that you're not allowed to have, and all these different aspects around that everybody's questioning who this guy is, even though we as an audience know he's an NPC the entire time. Once the movie itself and the characters within the movie find out that he is an NPC, the movie drastically gets better. It's just the conversation that Joe Keery and of course Jodie Comer have in the real world, talking about how this is an AI and how his code has expanded, and how they developed this one game where it's not to jump in a game to kill a bunch of NPCs like Free City really is of what it became, but they created this game where the characters within the game will evolve and they'll grow, and the point is to kind of watch it, kind of like a Sims type of game in a way, but the Sims aren't just mindless little puppets essentially walking around. They grow and they learn on their own, and so they had this game idea and they sold it to Taika Waititi's character and he shelved it, and so they thought they shelved it, but in reality he actually put those codes into Free City to make it what it is, and he essentially stole the code. So Jodie Comer's character wants to essentially get proof of this and help to use it in the lawsuit against him, and Joe Keery, they had a kind of a falling out with Jodie Comer, and so he works for Taika Waititi's character in this whole game development building essentially. And once they have that conversation about AI and whether or not that guy's code is from their original game that they originally made, it becomes, like I said, a lot more interesting. There's a lot more, I guess, thematic ideas of whether or not he is real, whether or not his emotions are valid, or whether or not he is essentially nothing that he does matters. And he goes through this phase where he thinks that nothing matters. Once he finds out that his world is not real, there's a lot of introspection that goes throughout his mind, and his relationship with his friend played by Lil Red Howery gets a lot more in depth, and it gets a lot more to it than you would expect from a movie like this. And although this isn't the point of the movie, this exploration of what consciousness is, this movie does tap into it, which this movie very could have easily glossed over, or it could have truly dived into it, but that's not the point of this movie. The point of this movie is to kind of break down video game culture in a way that's really fun and funny. A really great example of that is Channing Tatum's character in this movie, who I found absolutely hysterical. I had no clue he was in this movie. He plays one of the playable characters, and I recognize the actor who is like the real world equivalent of him. I just can't quite remember his name, but that pairing is hysterical, and although they're not in the movie as much as I wanted them to be, the role that he has is so funny. And Channing Tatum, I haven't seen him in a movie in a while, and he is on top of his game. He is hysterical in this film. And in terms of the emotional heart in this movie, there's kind of three different pairings. There's Jodie Comer and Ryan Reynolds. That's like the main type of pair that you start off with, but then it really does divulge into two different ones. It's Lil Red Howery's character and Ryan Reynolds. They eventually kind of have this blossoming friendship, and this thing at the end of the movie, this sacrifice that he makes at the end of the movie for Ryan Reynolds to succeed. And then of course you have Jodie Comer's real life character with Joe Keery, and this kind of relationship that they had. They were friends making this game, and all these different things that he put into the game as kind of a love letter to her was very sweet by the end of the movie. And this is where this movie, it just kept on getting better and better, because once they found out the mission of this thing, they need to get proof that it was a game that was stolen, and they go on this crazy adventure, those two characters, and the real world stuff starts to ramp up, and it gets more intense, and Taika Waititi's character is so over the top and boisterous. It's very, very entertaining to watch, and the ending of this movie really, really came together for me, because like I said, that heart of that friendship and the heart of that potential romance between Joe Keery and Jodie Comer really did tie the movie together so perfectly. And the comedy in the last act of this movie is on a whole different level with Buff Ryan Reynolds, dude as he's called in this movie. And my gosh, I do think that the funniest thing about this movie is actually not in this movie, or there is one joke that I'll talk about in a second here, but the commercial of the Buff Ryan Reynolds thing, I wish I didn't see that before the movie, but if you guys have seen that, that is probably even funnier, because it's like this Buff Ryan Reynolds talking about how he did the whole, working out to become like this jacked person like people do for these superhero movies, making fun of that essentially. And that was a very funny joke, and the trailer reaction from Deadpool and Korg for Free Guy is also very, very funny. But there is one joke and cameo in this movie that blew everything else out of the water. water. And that's when, Guy's getting beat up by Dude. It's a very intense, climax of the action in the final act of this movie. Jodie Comer's character was basically kicked out of the game. Now it's literally just all the NPCs in this world trying to survive before Taika Waititi's character can destroy all the servers, trying to get proof of the existence of their real game that they had beforehand. And they're trying to go there, but then Dude comes, ruins the whole thing, and just when you think Guy is down and out of this fight, he puts on his glasses and he puts on a Captain America shield, and that Avengers music score kicks in, and I was like, that is awesome. That is such a great use of the whole Disney Fox merger, because they can do these sort of things now. So I don't know when in the process that actually became part of this movie. I don't know if this was written before the merger or after the merger or whatever it was. I'm just happy that that moment was in this movie. But that's not the funny part about it. As great as that moment is, it is capped off with Chris Evans himself looking at his phone, watching the live stream with everybody else in the world, and he's just like, what the shit? And it's so funny. Our theater erupted laughing at that part. And then that's not all. He scrolls through his weapons and he pulls out a lightsaber. He has portal guns. There's so many references to so many other things. The Star Wars theme plays, and of course I'm always happy to hear the Star Wars theme play in any capacity. So I was glad to hear it in this movie as well. And this movie wraps up in a nice little bow. You have, of course, Ryan Reynolds and Lil Red Howery, reuniting at the end of the movie after, his little dusting moments, and the conversation that Ryan Reynolds has with Dude at the end of this movie is also hysterical, because his coding is not quite complete, so he doesn't finish his sentences correctly, and he'll say like adjective instead of saying an actual adjective. It's very funny, but that reuniting is very sweet. But then the actual heart of the movie, Joe Keery, having his love letter to Jodie Comer's character, and she realizes that all those similarities between Guy and her essentially were all because Joe Keery's character cared so much about her, and that he made Guy's character to have this fantasy of meeting the girl of his dreams essentially, and he'll never quite find that girl of his dreams. And seeing her in the game, at the moment that he sees her, he realizes that, oh, that's the girl of my dreams, and that is what makes him be able to come to life. And I love that idea that he made this character out of love, and that is what sparked his life essentially. And then their goodbye with each other, and then her realization that Joe Keery was the one who loved her the entire time, was a very sweet ending as well. I think there's some cheesy aspects of this ending that can be seen as kind of corny, but you know what? The movie won me over by the second act, and especially the third act. The comedy really started working to me the second half of the movie. I was really happy with all the YouTuber cameos in this movie, especially Jacksepticeye, hearing his story of how he met Ryan Reynolds and how they're kind of buddies now, which is really cool. And all these different things. The Chris Evans thing is hysterical. The buff Ryan Reynolds thing is hysterical. There's so many things in the last half of this movie that worked so well, that the setup did set up enough where it was an enjoyable experience overall. So I am recommending you guys see this movie, even though I just spoiled the crap out of it. I think it's a fun watch. So what do you guys think of Free Guy? What were the funniest things in this movie for you guys? I'm curious to hear all of your thoughts as well. This was also a dual upload day. I have my review up for Don't Breathe 2. I'm uploading them at the exact same time. So if you guys have not seen that video yet, go to that one, because I am seeing it tomorrow night, so I don't actually know what I think of the movie yet, but I will know tomorrow, so check out my thoughts on Don't Breathe 2 as well. So thank you guys for watching. Like I said, comment down below, leave a like on this video if you did enjoy it, and subscribe to the channel to see much more reviews just like this one. Thanks everybody for watching, and I hope to see you all in my next one.